How many times have you called yourself ugly or fat or stupid? We do this all the time. I'm stupid. Oh, I'm not smart enough. I'm not good enough. Nobody could love me. Like, there's repercussions to that. And you're only saying this out of ignorance because you don't know who you are.
Because if you don't have a vision, then you're only stuck with fear. If you don't have something that you're loving, if you're not living out of love, you're living out of fear. And a lot of people operate in that realm still.
Welcome back to Love, Life, and Legacy, the podcast dedicated to helping you navigate these hypersexualized times of ours. And in today's episode, Benjy and I unpack the idea of purity is a state of being. You know, everybody, we all go to dark places from time to time, and we all start to believe some very convincing and pervasive lies about ourselves, that we suck, that we are not worthy of the cosmos. Like, our gift as humans is that the cosmos is meant to be our playground, and we barely believe that we could get a good job or that we deserve happiness in our marriage or these really basic things. And it's an identity belief. And so we want to unpack why people believe that they're not worthy, why people feel impure, and how to feel pure, and also trying to convince you of the need to live as pure water, because it's the only way to live. It really is. But it can be an abstraction and a very loose concept that sounds nice, but how do I do it? Well, we unpack that in this episode, free of charge. This episode is sponsored by freedom and liberty, the feelings that we all want. So I hope you get a lot of that. It's the sponsor. God bless you. Welcome back, everybody. Benjy is having technical difficulties in his brain. How are you doing, Benjy? You all right? You looking good?
I'm physically, technologically, spiritually good. Thank you, Andrew.
Your beard is looking a little bit like those Amish, kind of like the religious Puritan kind of thing.
Oh yeah,
it's like thick on the chin and then light on the mustache.
I'll take it. Thank
Looking
you.
Good.
That's the best compliment I've gotten this week. Thank you so much.
Be in a boy band right now. You could easily be in a boy band. What would your name be if you were a boy band?
Benjy, obviously.
Benjy? Oh man, that's a solo project. So the boy band is named after you. It's not even. You're not even hiding the fact that you're gonna ditch those guys as soon as you become famous.
I was just jamming actually right before turning on this podcast. I have my guitar right in the corner. So
Benjy has a large fan, and he just blows it. He unbuttons one more, and then he just plays Latin songs.
There it is.
Yeah. There's some, by the way, best musicians. We got to see like the best of the best on our tour. There's Resonance in that came from the UK to the Czech event, and then we had the coolest band ever in Brazil, and they were from Brazil. We went to the venue. Okay, just short story here. We couldn't sleep. We are at an Airbnb, and I was sleeping on a couch because it was not an Airbnb that, as advertised. It didn't have toilet paper. Bunch of stuff didn't have. So it was either sleep on some like a motorcycle with a sidecar. I would have been on the side bed of Sammy, which is just, I feel like I'd wake up in the night smothered by him. He would have rolled off and just killed me in the night. So I just slept on the couch. But it was so loud. They were having these parties. And is it like in an apartment building, and somebody somewhere was having a crazy party every night. So we were like, okay, Friday night before the event, we're going to go to the venue and sleep there because it's in the countryside. Acreage. We heard like thousands of hectares, however many acres that is. And so we went there to the venue. I had my own room because Fernando wasn't there. So like just had my own room, hotel room style, deeply asleep. And then at about 2 a.m, I hear da-da-da-da-da-da, and the band starts rehearsing. And I irate because of the scenario. It was like the next morning, we got to be, but then quickly that anger turned into, wow, these guys are pretty good. Turned into, I'm a fanboy trying to sleep at 2 a.m, but secretly having the time of my life because I'm getting a private concert. Because it was just Sammy and I in the whole venue. He was in a different room, both struggling, and we both woke up so tired, but also be like, those guys were pretty good, you know. So they were amazing. And then we had the number one prize winners from Argentina, right? Those guys that won the pure water contest from True Mother. They played in Bolivia. So we had these amazing bands doing praise and worship nights. And then we had some really nice people in the Bay Area. And then in Philippines, good band too.
Yeah. We do mosh pits now officially in High Noon.
So that was the dividing line between young and old, where I went with the Wolfenbergers back to go get some sleep, and you moshed with a bunch of young folks.
I moshed and I took videos and I posted it to our staff, and I was like, all right, we do mosh pits now at High Noon officially. I had a surreal moment where I was watching that and I was like, oh my God, this is a High Noon workshop. This is not something we've done before. That was a lot of fun for sure.
Yeah, it's cool. It's cool. We have to, instead of punching people in the face, though, you kind of have to hug them. Yeah. It's a hugging mosh, but it can't get too huggy. Otherwise, we'll be accused of weird stuff. So, speaking of that, we wanted to talk about purity is a state of being. It's it's a large part of our discussion now, because it's like, and we had an entire podcast where we had like a discussion in the round about what is purity.
Yep.
But the spoiler alert is that it's not a thing that you are or you aren't. That is the old way of thinking, is that purity is something that is super fragile, and if you lose it, it's gone forever. And that's how it was taught in Christianity in the 90s. And it had dismal results, because basically you teach that, and then if somebody ends up kissing somebody else, then they're like, well, I'm going to hell, so I quit religion altogether, right? And so that was Purity 1.0. And then Purity 2.0, the discussion is that it's every thought that you have, every feeling that you have, every action that you take can lead you towards a sense of being a pure-hearted, pure-minded person, or towards being a resentful, bitter, pessimist. And so we can see this so clearly in our work, right? Like the guys that we take care of, and also there's a bunch of women, are constantly in this battle between wanting to be pure. And let's like, to be brutally honest, an old talk that I used to give is like, Hitler also talked about purity, a pure race, right? That was part of the talk that I would give, is like Genghis Khan. So I'm still in Mongolia. They worship Genghis Khan. It's the name of the airport. Biggest statue in the country is not Jesus, it's Genghis Khan, right? This dude was also of the belief that purity was that everybody was going to have the Mongolian seed in them. He was going to take over the world, and the Mongolians had to take over the world, right? So it was this idea that purity is a race. Same with him, same with Hitler. Don't tell any Mongolians that I just compared Genghis Khan to Hitler, by the way, because I will get killed. I'm still here. But so purity has been misused. That's the thing. And also in the early Christianity, it was used, I think they had good intentions, but they were just really dysfunctional people. So the Puritans, the people like were really like, sex is evil, all these things are evil, stay away, but they were also doing this stuff. So they were deeply conflicted. It's not that, it's like they had a sense, because they were deeply religious, that purity was important, but they themselves were very impure in action. So that's why Christianity turned into Jesus is perfect and we suck. We're the sinners. We suck. We just need to bide our time until we go to heaven and stop being sinners. That was the best that they could come up with. Our faith is next level, which is like, no, we can have heaven on earth. We just have to purify ourselves. And that purification process is through lineage, it's through effort. It's like, it's going to take some time. So for each individual, Benjy, like how have you seen that manifest? And maybe in your own life, this struggle between having a sense of wanting to be pure but feeling impure. How do you negotiate that?
Yeah.
How did you
Well,
negotiate that?
the default from a religious standpoint is fear-based, right? Like you're saying. And so I think the reason that the religious response throughout history has been fear-based and just to say no and go extreme chastity is because of a misunderstanding of the purpose of sex, the purpose of the sex drive, the purpose of for the universe, the purpose of why we have this. And because there's that single piece was missing, they had no choice but to respond to fear because it was just confusion and mayhem. Or it's like, okay, people are sinning, people are having extramarital affairs, people are raping, people are, masturbating into oblivion, utilizing their sex drive for themselves and not for, anything purposeful. And so naturally, I think people were like, we don't know what to do with all this mayhem and sin. What are we going to do? Well, let's just call it quits and say this is not good and this is evil and wrong. And so I think that's like for a lot of people that are coming into sexual recovery from sexual dysfunction or sexual healing from sexual dysfunction, their default way of thinking is, well, my sexuality is bad and it's wrong and it's evil, because that's how we've always operated through history. It always has been, it's like, I'm selfish. And so I think that's why like the first stages is like through the Core of the Universe book. It's through reading, True Parents' words on the vision, God's vision, the purpose, and highlighting the vision. Because if you don't have a vision, then you're only stuck with fear. If you don't have something that you're loving, if you're not living out of love, you're living out of fear. And a lot of people operate in that realm still.
I feel like that was the song that you were just singing before the podcast.
Maybe.
If you're not loving, you're not living.
You're not loving,
you're not living.
Well, it's like,
Benjy.
An example of this is like a lot of people, this is maybe a rudimentary example, but a lot of people say, oh, I'm afraid of disappointing my parents, for example. People say that. I don't think that's true. I think people are afraid of disappointing. They're afraid of getting hurt themselves. It's not your friend. It's not your parents' disappointment. You're afraid of getting yourself hurt by their disappointment. And this happens in marriage and couples too. And right. So it's to the same extent, it's like we are playing this game where we're trying to kind of maneuver ourselves around the problem, but where in the reality is like, if we just face it, then it's not as complicated as we make it out to be. That's what I'm saying.
I gotta say, because what you are, I feel like connecting is two very important points that, okay, the idea of vision, if you have a vision, that's who am I? It's based on who am I, who do I want to be? Who am I committed to being? Christianity, up until this point, has felt like because we have sin in us, then we are sinners. And that's like our identity. We are sinners. That's people call themselves sinners, right? Instead of saying, I am a child of God who has sin in him, that's something that can be worked on. But if I am a sinner inherently, then that's my identity. And it would be the same with sexual integrity, where there's a lot of people who don't have a vision that they are a child of God and that they need to merely kind of acclimate themselves to living like a child of God. That makes you more powerful than your addiction, but rather they just say, I'm an addict. I am this, the result. And so it's like an identity statement that shifts what you believe is possible and who you are based on your beliefs and your vision. And so that's crucial, because our belief is that we obviously have sin and we sin, but that's not who we are. That's just who we've practiced being as a human species up until this point. But we are meant to be so much more because we were born as children of God, right?
100%.
So when somebody starts to identify as a beautiful, like your heart is pure, it just is a little dirty. You just got to dust it off or wash it off or whatever and clean it up and start acting like somebody with a pure heart. Then all of a sudden, everything changes. So what you believe is possible for yourself and for the world changes, right?
Yeah. I've mentioned a few times, but there's a drastic moment in my life where I stopped seeing my sex drive as bad and selfish. And that was way into my life, like after getting married and having children. And I never ever once questioned whether my sex drive was a good thing until somebody asked me or pointed it out more so, you know? And so it was really just a default programming from wherever, probably ancestrally, societally, culturally, and beyond, and my own behaviors, all those, you know, sins we're talking about, right? That I just was like, I'm selfish and I'm wrong and I'm evil, until like I literally opened that book.
Which book?
The Core of the Universe. It's like,
Oh, okay.
it's just like, you know, riddled in the most positive way with statements from true parents saying like, hey, like God made your sexuality for goodness. And then I was like, oh my gosh, that's absolutely true. How could my sexuality be wrong because it's made by God? How could it be bad?
Yeah.
But we don't think like that, because it's, yeah.
Well, because of that very reason, right? That the conclusion that if we have sin in us, then we are sinners inherently. That same logic was then passed down to sex. Since sex has been used for evil, then sex is inherently evil. And true parents flipped that over and said, no, sex is inherently good. We've just it's been corrupted, right? It's been corrupted from the inside, from our ancestors. We've inherited this very dysfunctional relationship. It's beautiful if you allow it to be, right? It's just like, oh, my child is evil. No, your child might be dysfunctional because of probably how you raised them, but they can even out. They can, you know, nobody's born evil, you know, that's, so.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I think like first steps is figuring out, is like, okay, what are your actions driving you towards? And what is driving your actions? It's fundamental. It's like fear or love. And that's what I mean by, you know, like, are you a good spouse because are you faithful to your spouse because you love them, or because you're afraid of their disappointment? You know, I think a couple that's really based in love will stay faithful to each other, not because they're afraid of disappointing or hurting each other, because they just love each other and they couldn't imagine living a life otherwise, you know? And so I think that's really like at the first stages is questioning, where are we going to? What's our motivation? What's really driving me? Am I basing my understanding and relationship with my purity solely based in fear, you know, and kind of hypothetical, anxious based scenarios? Like, what if, like, thinking lines of thought of like, oh, you know, like what'll happen in my marriage because I'm so impure, or like this kind of thinking is very fear based. But it's like flipping that upside down and saying, okay, what do I want to offer my spouse with what I have and all the experiences I have in my life? What do I want to give to him or her? You know, like that kind of thinking is a very lovely way to think, is to offer sexuality as the pure form that it was born as.
And that is a very clear reason why a lot of guys who join our Ascend program in particular do it because their wives want them to, or because some guys do it because they want to prepare for their spouse. And that's more in the fear realm. Like, I don't want to be a bad husband. Instead of love, should be like, I want to get the most out of life. So I want to remove any roadblocks, any hindrances, any emergency brakes that I have that are slowing me down, so that I can be free to be myself.
Absolutely.
Take out all the crutches so that I can run, right? So
yeah, 100%. It's like, love yourself now, not love your future spouse that is or is not. Like, you have no idea. The future doesn't freaking exist. You know what I'm saying? But it's so weird when people, I mean, this is by far the single greatest reason that people want to quit porn, by far, is I don't want to bring this into my marriage. It's like, that's great. But that's maybe that should be like a secondary reason. Like, primary should be like, you just hate this behavior right now, and you want to live fully, and you want to love yourself fully, and you want to give yourself the best life possible right now, and understand how it's affected your life right now, you know?
Yeah. If you learn swimming with the motivation of not wanting to drown, like, I want to swim so that I don't drown, the swimming that you're going to be learning is treading water, actually. Think about that. The type of swimming that you do to not drown is treading water, so you don't go anywhere. But if you learn how to swim, how to get really far, like distance swimming, That's an entirely different skill set. That's like, I can go far. And of course, inherently, you're not going to drown if you learn how to swim well, but you learn how to swim to go places. Similarly, that energy of like learning how to get rid of porn for the sake of survival is a different energy than wanting to thrive. I want to have I want to go really far in my life. That's a very different energy. And we have seen some people just, okay, I got rid of my porn, so I'm going to stop working on my sexual integrity. They don't get it. They don't really get the whole picture. And it's going to come back to haunt them, because just because you don't have some skeletons in your closet, it doesn't mean that you have a beautiful house. I don't know if that metaphor makes sense.
Yeah. Well,
just because just because you're not being stabbed by a sword doesn't mean that you're living a great life.
Let's go back to the swimming, okay, Andrew? So
I'm throwing out as many analogies as I can, okay?
On top of the fact that you're only learning to tread water, the water you're in is not stagnant water. It is moving. It is a raging river, all right? And if you're not swimming, you're going to be swept. If you're not swimming, you're just going to be fumbling in life, right? Floundering, trying to figure out how to stay above water. But also, like, swimming can be fun. And this is a new concept that I think people don't initially get when they're starting their like purity journey, whatever you call it. Is like swimming can be fun. It can be exercise. It could be an awesome experience you do with people, and you have challenges and you really challenge yourself and you overcome things and you have victory, right? It can be so fun. And so we kind of are trying to shift the metaphor of climbing this mountain to not you alone, freezing temperatures, getting rained on, breaking your leg, but actually you're with a bunch of buddies, brothers, sisters that are like hand in hand. You're there with somebody that's older and wiser than you that knows has done this before and is telling you along the way, like, hey, you got this. Just keep going. You'll be fine, And all of a sudden, it's not a daunting, gigantic Mount Doom, but it's like you got your buddy Samwise Gamgee with you.
Says last name? That sounds Jamaican. Gamgee.
Gamgee. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. Well, I do also want to paint a picture. I mean, because we're attempting to give hope before I think we really address the feeling of impurity, right? Because 2 times last week, I had guys that are my mentees that were doing pretty well, and then they slipped early in the day, and then they just were like, well, since I'm down, I better slip again because I want to rub my face in this muck, right? And it's very interesting that while you feel crappy, you do crappy things to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a hard, I think, idea to really embrace because it doesn't make any logical sense because emotions are beyond the realm of logic, right? So if you genuinely don't value yourself, you're much more inclined to do stupid things to yourself because you're not considering yourself. Just like an immature kid will say really mean things to somebody and not really understand the impact. I remember I was fundraising once, and this little girl looked at her parents, and then she looked at me and she said, "We don't like you." And I was like, damn, that hurts, right? Or you see a little kid see a really like large person, like, "Mommy, look at that fat man," right? And I was like, "Ay, ay, ay." Because they're not sensitive to that person. They just haven't grown real deep sense of empathy just yet. They're growing. But similarly, like, instead of painting this picture like you hate yourself, you could just be really immature to yourself. You don't understand yourself, just like a little kid doesn't understand the pain that they inflict when they call somebody ugly or fat. Similarly, you might not understand the pain you do to yourself when you call yourself ugly and fat. How many times have you called yourself ugly or fat or stupid? We do this all the time. I'm stupid. Oh, I'm not smart enough. I'm not good enough. Nobody could love me. Like, there's repercussions to that. And you're only saying this out of ignorance because you don't know who you are. You don't know your value. And so the journey of high noon is the journey of coming into your sense of value, knowing it. Because our church and religions try their best to preach and to like motivate you to understanding who you are. But if you have these impediments, right? Like a lot of people, Sunday morning, they're really inspired. Sunday night, they're watching porn and they're like, what just happened? It's because you touched heaven. You felt so good, but you didn't do that. You were borrowing somebody else's words and motivation and belief in you. You didn't have the belief yourself. So after the loan was given to you by way of a great sermon or really great worship music or whatever, and you're like, I can do anything. You come back home and then you left with this immature sense of self where you don't have your own actual belief. You borrowed the belief from somebody else. Now you don't have your own belief and now you hate yourself.
Hey, I wanted to let you know about the Radiant program. What's the Radiant program? If you are a young, blessed couple that was blessed in marriage sometime in the last few years, then this program is just for you. It is a couples intimacy program for young couples. And you can join with your spouse, you can join without your spouse. We've got group discussions and community for men and women separate. And also we have opportunities for you and your couple to dive deeper into God's word, into the word of true parents, and learn how to experience an absolute sex relationship. So if that's you and you want to join, check out somewhere in this video, this episode, and below, or go to highnoon.org to check it out. All right, hope to see you there.
And then it's almost even worse because you're like, well, I felt so good and now I feel so bad, so I don't want to feel so good anymore. So you protect yourself. I don't want to go to church anymore. It hurts too much, right? This is so many people's story, and it's really just because of an immaturity. And that's a new topic that we started to bring up in this tour, is that your shadows aren't there because they're bad. Your shadows, the things like the reason you go to porn, all this stuff is not because it's bad. It's all you know in your state of immaturity. That's all you know, like how to protect yourself. Like a little kid who just, like I did a podcast last week, which is like talking about the blankie. Like little kids have these blankies to give them a sense of protection. It's all in their head, right? That's what porn is. It's all in your head. It'll be okay. I'll just watch one more thing, right?
Yep.
But it's just out of immaturity. And the point is to let go of your shadows and say, hey, you served me in the past to get me this far, but now you're in the way. And now I got to let you go. I got to get an upgrade. And you're not included in that package, Mr. Shadow, Mrs. Shadow. Get out of here. Right? And you fire them nicely. Not out of anger, but you just let them go. Management is making some changes. Sorry to let you know. You pack your bags. Get out of here. Shadows.
Yeah. I think those experiences you just shared of those individuals that relapsed twice in a day because of feeling like, oh, I'm already down. And also the experience of someone like you described going to church and then feeling great and then coming home and facing reality and then kind of making decisions like, oh, it's the same thing. And I would describe it as the shame cycle. It's the feeling of I made a mistake, therefore I am bad. And I hate this feeling of feeling bad. And so therefore I'm going to try to drown and numb this feeling of shame with more of the same behavior, right? Which is ludicrous logically speaking. It's absolute ludicrous logic, but it works. It works.
Temporarily.
Temporarily, yes, thank you. It's a very, very, very short-term solution that if you ask someone in the moment, like, is this working? Is watching porn, is any, whatever affliction people have, is it working? Like, yeah, they'll say, yeah, in that moment. But if you ask them from a 10-year snapshot of their life, that this has been in their life, 20-year snapshot, no. It's like it causes so much more pain and remorse and self-hatred and shadows than it does, then you can't compare apples to apples. It's like absolutely not. And so I think that
can you compare Granny Smith to Royal Gala apples?
No, it's comparing rotten apples to apples. It's
Okay.
it's like comparing rotten apples to, pineapples, completely different fruit.
Okay.
So I think that like the shadows we're talking about it's like that moment where in those examples where the brothers slip up, that's the moment that the shadows creep back. like the impurity, if we're talking about purity as like water, like the impurity in the water is creeping back into your system, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it probably happened a little before that, like the day before or that day that kind of led them down the trail of acting out. It probably was something like they were feeling an emotion that they were bottling up, perhaps from work or relationships, and it was kind of starting to ferment as a shadow, and then they acted out, and then the shame cycle kicked in, and then they added more shadows on top of it. And so it's kind of like there are two ways to get rid of a shadow. Fundamentally, it's like you can shed light on it, or you can cover it with more shadows. And in those instances, people are like, okay, well, I want to get rid of this feeling, this dirtiness, this contamination in my life, and so I'm just going to cover it with more shadows because that makes it disappear. But it's still there, and therefore you have more darkness. There's just more darkness. But what we're trying to help people do is like identify early on, way before you're about to jump, like way before that. Metaphorically speaking, we're talking about like watching porn in this example. Way before that, identifying what are those very, very micro thought patterns and decisions that lead people, that are like tiny shadows. And then we just get really good at cleaning them, noticing them and cleaning them off, And I feel like that's when we're talking about Purity 2.0. We talk about things like the garden, it's a garden, it's not an egg. We talk about, I think water for me is the most simple way that I understand it, is because water can be cleansed. From what I understand, every type of water can be cleaned and purified, like no matter how contaminated. Our scientists can check me up on that, but I'm pretty sure any type of water you can cleanse, through a process. Yeah.
Dean Kamen, Water Boxes Africa. This guy, 20 something years ago, Dean Kamen, who invented the Segway, those stupid things that you fly around on, was just a chronic serial inventor, and he invented these boxes, these black boxes that look like a little fridge, like a beer fridge. And you can put malaria-laden water from a swamp in there, and it will filter it into pure drinkable water.
There you go. Yeah. Yeah, last time I checked, any type of water can be purified. And so we get really good when we have clear water. We get very good at noticing when it's unclear and murky. You get very good at it. But if you have murky water, no one's going to notice if you dump a gallon of gasoline or toxins into it. It's like you won't notice that. Your conscience is already feeling shameful. It's like, I'm already a bad person. I'm already terrible. I might as well, like that line of thinking is so easy. And but that process of cleansing, people don't realize can happen so much faster and simpler. Not easy necessarily, but so much faster and simpler than people realize. They're like, oh, I've been watching porn for 20 years. It's going to take me 20 years to quit. It's like, no, that can happen in a weekend at one of our workshops. It has happened. That can happen in one of our programs. That can happen in one conversation with the right person. Is you can cleanse everything and just live as a new person. And then from then on, it becomes this balancing act of keeping your purity, the state of mind of purity,
Yeah. Yeah. And so, honestly speaking, we all feel impure from time to time because we're all dealing with stuff in layers, right? It comes in waves because we're dealing with like layers of our own consciousness, our ancestors, which live inside of us. And this is biologically true now. It used to just be spiritually conceptualized through our church and like ancestor liberation, but it's like their DNA is very clearly activated in us. Epigenetics, things like that. It's like they are influencing us, but we can choose to upregulate certain DNA, which is like our righteous ancestors, and like focus on that, and then we can downregulate these swindlers and miscontents, these kind of people. So, but it's like habituating. So in that water analogy, like we've basically had two faucets to choose from, the toxic faucet and the purest water that you can imagine. And for some reason, we have more of the toxic than the pure water, and so it outweighs it. But when you just have a blast, like you're talking about, it can happen in a weekend and it can happen in a conversation. That's like God's grace.
Mhm.
And that's like a blast in your face of the freshest water that you can imagine. And like that's what I'm meant for. That's native to my soul. Like that's who I'm meant to be. And it won't cleanse all of your mistakes. And it, like the full healing doesn't happen in a weekend or a conversation, but it's a blast of a reminder of what life could be like. And then it's on you to live more like that in that pure water. Turn on that water, the pure water faucet on full blast, and then start turning off the toxic faucet. And that's rusty. It's going to be a little bit hard. And then in the process, the confounding thing is many people, they're like on this journey, right, Benji? And they're like, okay, here, I'm going to turn on the pure water faucet. And then they see their hand reaching for the toxic faucet to like release more toxicity. And they're like, what am I doing? And it's like, that's what you've always done. It's not going to be easy to stop the habit of releasing toxic crap into your life, into your mind, into your heart. It's not going to be easy. It's rusty, but you can over time loosen that faucet and then loosen and then tighten. You can unstuck it and then close it off eventually, so that when you have a real pure water life, honestly speaking, when you're really focused on the things that give life to your mind, to your heart, to your soul, to this world, then anything toxic becomes very apparent and gross. Like, oh my God, why would I want to be a part of that conversation? Or why would I want to watch that thing online that makes me feel so conflicted? Why would I willingly just let that toxicity into this beautiful water that I have?
Yeah. I got you, man. Yeah.
Yeah, so our heart goes out. It's not, like Benji said, it's not easy. And there's so many of you who are really vacillating. You're jumping from one to the other, and it's really confusing. It doesn't make logical sense, but it's very true that that love and emotions are stronger than the principle itself. So that's why you can have really good people doing really stupid things. And you're an amazing person. And if you're doing stupid things, it's just out of immaturity. It's not because you're a bad person. This is a very key distinction. That identity statement is like, I am a good person. I'm just acting like a weasel. I'm acting small, and I'm better than this.
Right.
When you start to actually believe that and live up to that, then it's a game changer.
I think I've seen in the eyes of men something liberating when they understand that their behavior is not, it's hard to say this because it very much sounds like justification and rationale. But like, for example, watching porn, masturbation, it is an inevitable byproduct of some kind of escapism behavior and tendency. Does that make sense? And I want to say unnatural and inevitable, because inevitable kind of sounds like it's going to happen anyways, so you might as well not try. What I mean is, like, if it wasn't porn, it was going to be something else, unless you dealt with whatever you're trying to escape from. I was just talking with a brother who was like clean from porn for more than a year, and has over the last year developed many crushes on a bunch of sisters. And it's like,
Sure.
I kind of help put the things together, the dots together, that you just kind of replaced one form of escapism for another, which is very much based in fantasy and temporary feeling good, right? Which is a form of an addiction. And so I'm saying that not to like justify it, only to understand that, like, just pushing through stuff and saying just quitting for the sake of quitting is not going to work long term. It's not going to work. It's not a sustainable recovery or healing journey. And so we have to figure out the reasons. We have to figure out the root causes. We have to figure out where you want to go, first of all, like what you love so much about your life that's worth fighting for. And how do we run towards that? And away from the stuff that's causing you more dysfunction and unhappiness in your lives. And so that's like the process of deep healing. And it's a lifelong thing, but it's also, like people say this thing like, oh, quitting porn is a lifelong thing. I don't agree with that at all. Like, says who? There's always going to be temptation for sure. But the process of growing for sure, 100% is a lifelong thing that we're all doing. It's like we're all growing, we're all learning our own immaturities, our own stagnant water, our own shadows that come up, and we're all addressing them. But to say that like porn is a lifelong, no, that's ludicrous. Like, who says that? Because if you say that, you're going to set yourself up for failure and just going to justify and say that, oh well, it's always going to be there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not. I remember talking to a really great therapist who was saying that the idea that I am an addict and that's your identity, like AA, that's like wilderness era healing.
Mm-hmm.
And then Chanuguk level healing is identifying as a child of God and then letting go of your addiction and not identifying it anymore that you are an addict. Once you graduate, very different. It's an identity statement again. So yeah, the idea of purity is that like you were born pure and your hearts are inherently pure somewhere in there. That's your native language is purity.
Mm.
But you've just were born in a weird world that has somewhat dirtied the water. But yeah, you can absolutely purify it. And it's a beautiful process. And I think I mentioned it on this podcast. Like that was my question when I joined the church was not, is there a God, but can I be pure again? And the answer is absolutely. You can purify your heart. There's prices to be paid for the mistakes that you've made. If you've hurt people, if you've hurt yourself, there's healing that needs to happen. And that's the journey. But know that it can happen to anybody regardless of what they've done. There's redemption for even the worst of us. And the moment that you really feel that is the most liberating moment ever. It's like breathing air for the first time,
Yeah.
Because we live when you live in an impure state and that's who you think you are, and that's what your real belief is, then your whole life is just surviving.
Yeah.
It's trying to make it through rather than really being able to live in the light and thrive and just kind of do what you're born to do.
Do you ever talk with people that
No.
feel like they're like worse than anyone else?
Yeah, everybody.
And all the time, right? Like
All
I'm
the
talking
time.
with people about their crushes, about their porn habit, and they're like, I haven't watched porn or masturbated in 2 years, and I'm so sorry that I ever watched porn. I'm like, and I have to try very hard, honestly, to not minimize their situation because that's a horrible thing for a mentor to do. Is just say, you're fine. Like, don't worry about it. You're good.
Just another number to me, kid. You're good.
Yeah. So but I have to really step back and, empathize, have compassion for them and really get to why they feel so shameful about themselves and their past. Right. And it's like, it wasn't that bad, first of all. And it was a long time ago. Like, you don't have to feel bad about it. But I think one thing is that, people are riddled with shame. That's shame. Is like, I made a mistake and I'm still a terrible person because of the mistake I made or I have made, right? But also, the reality is that we don't talk openly about this stuff. And the reason and that in itself is a knock-on effect, which allows people to feel like I'm the only one and I'm weird. It's like how many people I've talked to that have had crushes and they think they're like the worst person ever. I'm like, like, God bless you. I'm sorry that's hard, and I have to say this to them, like, I'm not trying to minimize this, but you're not weird. And I've said that. I've talked with like grown men and they just told them for like a minute straight, you're not weird. You're not weird. And twice people just started crying just from hearing those words. So it's like, you're not weird for watching porn. This is you trying to deal with something. You're not weird for having crushes. You're not weird for your mistakes. You're just growing. Like, come on. Like, you're going to make mistakes in life because if you didn't, there'd be no point of all these things. If we were just born perfect, what'd be the point of living? What'd be the point of marriage if we were perfect spouses from the beginning and perfect parents from the beginning? It's like, we'll make mistakes. And we're the ones that create the shadows and make them bigger by exacerbating them and pouring more gasoline on the fire and dousing our shadows with more shadows. It's us.
It's such a pervasive lie, right? That I've known people that were sexually abused, and predators, even though they don't have a script, there's no like how to be a sexual predator, how to be a molester or anything like that. But somehow they follow the same patterns whereby they tell the kid, if somebody's like a sexual predator, they will sexually abuse the young person, and then they will tell them that it's their fault, right? And then so that the kid in their immaturity believes that they made that happen, and that also if they tell anybody, they're going to get hurt. So they're imprisoning the child in this belief that it's their fault, and that if anybody knows, that they'll be hated, right? And that's like very, very, very horrific, but so common that like, it's like, how do all these predators know to do that? That's part of our ancestry. That's part of the story of the fall, right? Of like the devil whispering to Eve these lies, right? That you're not of God, you're just worthless, this kind of thing. And that's how sex started. And so when you're talking to these young guys who have made this covenant with the devil through like watching porn, and it comes with the inherent lie that they've been whispered in their ear thousands and thousands of times, is that you suck. This is your fault. You're a piece of crap, right? Instead of sorry for the fact that you were born in this broken world. You're beautiful. You were just let down by these tech companies, by the internet, by your parents in many cases. Nobody protected you, right? When you were young. Of course, when we're adults, we have some level of conscious awareness and decision making, but so much of that is set by when we were kids. That's like unconscious, right? So all of us have been disappointed by society, but at some point you can't be the victim anymore, obviously, and you have to grow up. But for those people who are really stuck in this belief, like I'm weird and I'm bad, that's exactly the lie. Like, and I speak in terms of devil. I honestly never pictured a guy with a pitchfork and giant muscles, but just this energy that takes us away from God uses sex so perfectly and acutely to convince us that we suck and that we don't deserve love. And there's a reason for that, because the energy was spawned through sex, according to our faith, and it rings pretty true when you look at the realm of sexuality and how humans have dealt with it. Sex always traditionally takes us away from God. How crazy is that? The one thing that connects us to eternity, past, present, future, the one thing that makes us immortal through our genetics, is the thing that causes the most rifts between us and the divine. There's an energy that planted that seed long, long ago. And so you have to separate yourself from those lies that are so pervasive and convincing that we suck. Our actions definitely do suck sometimes, but it's not because we suck. It's because, again, immaturity. We don't know any better. Yeah. So hearing this is part of knowing, but then acting like it is when you know in substance. And that's where you got to break the habit of living in the old world.
Yeah. I think people can purify themselves. If y'all are listening and you're like, oh, okay, I want to live a pure water life. That's the slogan of the decade, right? Just ask yourself, like, where are you feeling stagnant? Where are you feeling contaminated? Where are you feeling the shadows in your lives? And if you have to question if you have any shadows, I think that's a good indicator that you probably do. I don't know. Some people are different, but I would say, like, there's a certain individual that is so ruthless and relentless about cleansing their conscience. And I feel like that's the type of relentless people we need to be, especially if you're in a stage where you are feeling impure, or you have made mistakes, or you're just in kind of a rut right now. Like, cleanse yourself, identify those shadows, let them loose, liberate them. Like Andrew said, liberate those shadows, let them go, shine some high noon light on it, some of God's light, have a conversation, and if you're in a situation where like, I can't think of a single like shadow in my life, I think that's a good sign. I think in my experience, if you are living a high noon life, you know it. It's very clear. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So everybody, just shut up and do the work. Just kidding.
Just there. Just shut up.
So anyway, in this work, I've come I was really deep into trauma and understanding trauma and all this, and it's a big part of our zeitgeist now is talking about trauma. It's really important to be trauma informed, but also I really feel like that's very addictive is to focus on your trauma. And so for sure it's good to understand and to heal, but then to move on, because I talk to a lot of people who are really stuck in obsessing over their trauma, and it's like, well, now you're just living in the past. There is a process to heal all trauma. But the point is to then live a life beyond that and just to chill. So there's definitely work involved. There's stopping and healing. There's looking back in the past. There's living in the present. And there's also building the future. So if you want a pure water life, it's all those things, right? And they all have their own place. So reach out to somebody. Talking is a massive part of the healing process. Formulating a vision, like Benjy said, is a huge part of the process. What is beyond the life that you know? It's a life that's waiting for you. What is your life if you're living in the light? If you're pouring more pure water into your life through your mind, the things that you're thinking, the things that you're hearing, the conversations that you're part of, the social media that you're watching, and the things that you're feeling, the things that you're focusing on. When you focus on something long enough, you start to feel something, and when you obsess over something, then that gets locked in with an emotion, and now that's like a truth. So do you want positive things to be truth or negative things? So work on it. We're here to help. We're here to unpack it. Reach out to us. Reach out to somebody. It's funny because half my face is in a shadow this entire episode.
Hey.
This metaphor doesn't always work. It's just bad lighting in this room, guys. I'm not hiding. Okay. God bless you all. See you next time.
Love yous.
Hey, did you know that our team wants to do more events? Well, if you want to bring the High Noon message to your community or group, then let us know and we'll try to work something out. There's a simple application that you can fill out right now at highnoon.org/invite. And one of our team members will get back to you to see what's possible. That's highnoon.org/invite. All right, see you in the next episode.